everybody. My name's still Jed, and this is Prez. Hey guys, episode 9, we're nearing the end. We got a few more presidents to show you, and we're super excited. We think you're going to really enjoy this episode, so sit back and enjoy. Harry S. Truman is our first one for today. He was our 33rd president. He was a Democrat, and he was president from 1945 to 1953. Harry S. Truman's first and probably most influential accomplishment as president was ending World War II. Now, it's heatedly debated on if his decision was right or not. I'll jog your memory. He gave the executive order to drop atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan. I totally botched the pronunciation, but you get the drift. It took a lot of innocent lives in Japan, but the real truth was if the only other option was America invading Japan, and that would have meant not only Japanese deaths, but American deaths as well. Harry S. Truman was able to stop World War II, but it also put America into the atomic age and showing that nuclear weapons were a real and destructive thing. But Harry S. Truman's choice was a hard one, but I think he made the right one in terms of saving lives. In addition to this, afterwards, Harry S. Truman handled post-World War II very well. He helped to start NATO. He helped new countries to come out of the ground because, everything's going wonky times after World War II. He was able to provide the firm leadership that the nation really, really needed in this transition time. He was also very influential in keep making sure that America was against communism, because right after World War II ended, the Cold War started. He's our first Cold War president, and he took it very well. He was going to make sure that the Soviet Union knew we meant business. This was a good philosophy to have, but because of this, he had to make more tough decisions concerning the Korean War. He put boots on the ground, or troops, in Korea for the first time. It's basically just the kind of same instance as Vietnam. North Korea wanted to take control of all of Korea and take South Korea and make it a communist nation. We did not want this, so Harry S. Truman sent in troops to Korea to try and stop them from totally toppling the democratic government there. He did the same for Vietnam as well, sending troops into Vietnam, starting off that conflict. At first, you're going to say, well, wait a minute, guys, this is bad. He's sending in troops to Vietnam. Well, at this point, we need to have at least some military involvement. I think the military involvement went too far, but throughout Harry S. Truman's short time during these two war involvements, we needed to have at least something there, and he was getting the job done in terms of sending the right amounts there. It's when LBJ went overboard and sent too many troops to Vietnam when things really started to get really, really, really to a bad place. Another huge and I think one of his best accomplishments, but one that's doesn't have as much light shed onto it, is how he transferred wartime America to peacetime America. The 1950s were one of the most prosperous times in human history, they were definitely the most prosperous time for America. There were jobs galore because of all of the influx of jobs that had to be made after World War II. And Harry S. Truman was really good at moving us from wartime to peacetime. He helped convert factories that were making airplanes into factories that were making TVs. He was making sure that America returned back from normalcy, from the war to peacetime. And I think it helped that he was president during the wartime, so that people trusted him as they moved into their more prosperous and peaceful lives. Wrapping up Harry S. Truman, there's one small thing that he really pushed for that was a good thing that he didn't actually get done, and that was civil rights. He pushed very hard for civil rights, but sadly, because there was a lot of Southerners in Congress, he wasn't able to pass it. But all in all, I think Harry S. Truman was a very good president and a very strong and firm leader. Next up is James Madison. He was our 4th president, and he was a Democratic Republican. He was president from 1809 to 1817. James Madison was our first wartime president, or our first large-scale war, because Thomas Jefferson's war was more small-scale and shorter, but James Madison was president during the War of 1812, which was our first major conflict. To put the War of 1812 into context, okay, so France and England have had a lot of wars especially in that time period. They fought constantly and a lot. And basically during this wartime, America was able to make a profit off of the war itself because we were able to ship weapons and food and whatnot to both sides. And England started to not like this. So they came in and they started like pirating the ships, essentially. Kind of like how the pirates were doing it, but instead of taking the supplies, they would take sailors. So we were making money off of this, but now we're losing our own sailors. This is really bad because we're losing export, we're losing money. The sailors don't want to get on boats anymore. Our economy is kind of crumbling because of that. And James Madison knows that we have to get into this war so that they will stop doing that because it's crippling our trade. So he chooses to jump in on the French side to fight the British because French had helped us in the past and they were trying to hurt our ships themselves. Even though our military exploits during this war are less than stellar, we did end up winning in a sense. It was more a treaty that stopped the battle, but they stopped stealing our sailors, which was why we entered the war in the first place. So I call this war a win. And yes, again, while our military exploits weren't as, successful as we wanted them, it showed that we could withstand a war and we could stay strong during it. And it takes a really strong leader in order to lead a very, very young nation through a very, very catastrophic war. And I think James Madison showed how good of a leader he was, and because he was a Democrat and Republican, which was high on states' rights and freedom of speech, he invited criticism that came during that time because of his presidential tenure, which I think also shows what kind of a man and what kind of a president he was. James Madison wrote the literal Constitution, so he made a very, very good president. And he was able to lead us through the war, and afterwards he was able to set up good relations with Britain and France, even after a war. So I give James Madison a thumbs up. Next up is George Washington. Closing out this episode, he was the first president of the United States, and he was technically a Federalist. He served from 1789 to 1797. George Washington is the president of presidents. While there are some that are a little bit more accomplished, he set the standard for all presidents to come. He built the country and he built the presidency. To put it into context, most people don't know this, the states still had a hard time being themselves even after we won independence. We were all states, but we counted ourselves as little mini countries. He was the only real man who could unite all of them together under one banner, the Star-Spangled Banner. He did a great job of doing this and helped unite the country as one under one constitution and one president. And there's so many accomplishments that he made during his presidency that just mark what a president should be and how they should carry out their duties. Like I said, when he was technically a Federalist, he didn't believe in political parties and thought that they would rip the country apart. But he technically came in line with the Federalists in terms of his values when he ran for his second term. The last huge accomplishment that he made was staying out of the French Revolution. As you probably know, the French helped us win the American Revolution by sending troops to help us. And during the French Revolution, which was very chaotic and bloody, and we didn't really know who to help, they asked for help in liberation from their monarch, and George Washington said no. Now you might say, oh, how could you do that? Like, they helped you, why can't you help them? Well, we were a super young country, guys. Like, we're barely years old. We haven't even been alive a decade. We're at our first president. What would it be like if we're sending troops that we haven't even paid back for fighting in our first War of Independence to help somebody else abroad? It's not safe for an early nation, and we didn't even know who to help at this point because we had allies with the government, but we were sympathizing with the revolutionaries. So that was a hard decision he had to make, and he got a lot of bad rap for it in the moment, but it was a good one, and it saved the country. Well, I hope you liked this episode. It was fun to film, and it was fun to learn all about the presidents, and we have just a few more coming up. We're down to the top 5, which will be coming up in our next episode. You got to make sure you subscribe and like and comment and tell everybody about it, okay? We got more coming, but we need you guys to help us out. Stay awesome.